was a really good photographer. But it's just really beautiful. Lily Gladstone. I'm not sure if you've heard of him, but Martin Scorsese. His book had even heard of this reign of terror. What does the film and the book mean to you?
The next generation behind me and the generation after that has expressed some surprise and in some cases anger. Why didn't my generation and my parents' generation tell them more about this? We have known about it, but it's not the kind of subject that we would talk about. There are some families that are grieving to this day, and it is a serious matter, and we just didn't talk about it a lot. So when the movie came out, and Apple had, and Marty had the premiere, all those theaters leased out, and you went to each, you and Leo and Robert and Lily and everybody went to theater to show yourselves, take a bow, and the passion that you saw was a combination of all that emotion, which you shared with us, and you still do. And it's a very, very moving experience, but it's just something that, how do you talk about it? Well, I think David Grand picked up where the deaths of Sybil Bolton and Charles Ritcorn's book, Fight for February, and other stories about this era left off. David came in and did a great job, and Mark Scorsese and his team brought it to film.
And Lily, when I saw on HBO the show Watchmen, that's when I really learned about the Tulsa Race Massacre, and I shudder to say it, but it's probably how millions of Americans learned about the Tulsa Race Massacre, also coincidentally or not, in Oklahoma. And I'm wondering, did you know about the Reign of Terror? What happened to the Osage people? Did you learn about it when you were growing up?
What I knew of it was, before I wanted to become an actress, I always wanted to be a ballerina. And my hero was Maria Tallchief. And I was homeschooling that particular year, and my little special interest project was on Maria Tallchief, reading her biography and everything. Sorry, that was the year before I was homeschooling. Anyways, the year I was homeschooling and was kind of diving into my own curriculum, I guess. My mom helped develop that. She kind of took a Montessori approach, self-guided learning, so we followed my love of Maria Tallchief and expanded the curriculum around that. And my dad told me the famous story that a lot of us here in Indian country, when we hear about Osage oil wealth, and it's in the film. It's just the joke about how, yeah, Osages, they were the richest people in the world for a while. They had all this oil money, and so much that they, go buy a Rolls Royce, run out of gas, and then go buy another one. Which, we get into the more nuanced part of that in the story in the film. And I love the way that whole scene was etched out. It's like you saw the exploitation happening on that level. And then Dad had said something, I don't remember exactly how he put it, but I remember wondering if Maria Tallchief's family was okay, being worried about her family, because he said something about Osages being killed for their oil money. But I had no idea what big scale, the way you conceptualize that as a fifth grader is you don't think about it in a systemic way. You think about it in the way that, you learn violence when you're younger. Like, you just think about it in more personal, small ways. So as far as learning about it as an adult, when many people were learning about it for the first time through the book, I heard about the book, I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that. I remember Dad talking about that. But then reading it, and really seeing how systemic it was and how widespread it was. I know, like the Reign of Terror specifically, I didn't have the language for it in that way. But yeah, it was, there was definitely a seed planted, but make no mistake, it was not by the public schools. It was not in the curriculum that I was in school to learn. It was because my family and this curriculum that had been built around Maria Talchi.
I went to a private school, progressive, Philadelphia. We didn't learn about any of this stuff either, so I don't think it was just Montana or Seattle public schools not teaching it. Marty, Leo said something really interesting about you in this film. He said, quote, "I've never seen Marty more committed to trying to tell a story as truthfully as he did this one." A lot of thought, a lot of effort was put into it. You've told true stories before, but here is one of your two muses saying he's never seen you more committed to getting something accurate. Do you think that's true?
Well, I think it's such a big subject to try to focus on one answer to this, but there's a difference between accuracy and truth. That's very subtle. One could be accurate, but it could be soulless in a way. And the soul I found was when I went to the 2 times that I went to Osage County in pre-production, right before COVID, when I met Chief Standing Bear and Chad Renfro and Julie and a number of others that day. It could come from ignorance, it could just be, a very urban person, lived in Manhattan, grew up in Manhattan. So, there goes, had nothing to do with that, okay? But what it is I really got to know them. I got to know the chief a bit and met some of the people, and somehow my anxiety about how could I have any connection with these cultures which were very, very, I thought, very different from my own, or from what I feel, I should say, and what I think about. In any event, the second time, I was told that we had to go to a dinner at Grey Horse. Grey Horse is another district. There's Hominy, there's Pawhuska, Grey Horse, and Hominy. And I think I was told at the last minute. And my producers took me there, and they said, you meet a few people, but there were over 250. Full weekend, it was amazing. And a traditional Osage dinner of beef in gravy, and meat pies, and spoons, no knives and forks. And then the people got up and started speaking. And when they started speaking, I started this catastrophe, I would say, this catastrophe that I had immersed myself in, which we were led by the David Grand book, but I was immersing myself further and further into it, and even the landscape to me was alien, but this catastrophe suddenly had a face, and the face were the people there, and they got up and talked about their grandparents and their uncles and their aunts, and one man told me, got up and said, you have to understand, William Hale and Henry Rome were best friends. That was William Pipestone, Wilson, I'd say. And he said, you have to understand that. And I said, oh, that's the case. This isn't a very simple story of agents coming in and finding out who the bad guys are. And it isn't simply a case of who did it. Because I tell you, the first shot I take of people coming into the town, they all did it. They all did it. We all did it. And it's a way of thinking. It's a way of accepting, dehumanizing other people, you see. And so, because they think and look differently than us. And it's about the land, you see. And so he got up and said that, and I said, that's very interesting. His best friend, yet he had him shot. Then Margie Burkhardt got up. She's Ernest's granddaughter, and she pointed out that, you know, many people suffered, etc. And I began to realize too that this wasn't really talked about that openly. And they were speaking quite openly that night. And she pointed out, said, you have to remember one thing. Molly and Ernest were in love. And that's when I knew that that's what the movie should be. I didn't know how, because we were about to get on a plane, go back to New York, and then COVID hit. You know, I just didn't know how, but I felt that that was the way. If they're in love, and yet he participated in this horror, what is that? What is our human nature? You know, and so I thought, rather than coming in a picture where you justifiably, I should say, and rightly so, you were mentioning before, coming in with a message and saying this is bad, and you know, you have an audience looking at it, and the audience saying, yes, I totally agree, that's glad, a very brave film to make, or story to write, or play to do, and then you go home and you feel, I think, self-satisfied that you agree with this liberal or humanist point of view, I should say, and then you forget about it. And you forget about it, because it's done on the surface. But what if you get under the surface? What if you get inside the people? Because Leo looked at me after that was over, and he said, a couple of weeks later, we were trying to combine both, all the stuff going on with the, you know, Ramsey and all of them, all the logistical narrative stuff, and the love story. We were having a real trouble. And Leo was going to play Tom Waite, you see. And so I still was having trouble with him. He said, I don't know what this is. I said, I don't have, there's no suspense because I know who did it. I said, so why are we dealing with the FBI? So he looked at me and he said, where's the heart? Where's the heart of this story? And I said, the heart is Molly and Ernest. He said, I think I should play Ernest. And we took the script. Ages went flying, and then COVID hit. And I was alone with that script for months and months, as we all know, not knowing whether you're going to live or die, but I was just working on that. I was getting phone calls, we were doing things on Zoom and stuff like that. And Marianne Bauer was my co-producer and researcher and archivist. She was dealing with all the research. I got the transcripts, and we started to work on that. Eric Roth and a couple of other friends of mine. And we just kept opening it up, and so in a way, Leo became part of that too. And that happened on set also. We just wouldn't let anything ride in a way. We wanted to make sure we had at least the accuracy, and then we could find what it really meant, you know. And so for us, it had to be something that was intrinsically in the soul of the people, rather than just telling you this is bad, look what happened. It's not going to make any difference.
Yeah, Julie could answer that.
Sure, Chief. So, oh dear. So, in the late 1700s, 1800, there was a delegation of Osages that went to see Thomas Jefferson, and this is at a time when our country was new. And so what they would do is they were going up inviting different tribes to come up. And this delegation of Osages comes up. And as they're standing and they're talking and they're discussing matters, one of the chiefs at the time turned and looked at a military man that was standing there. And he sees this gorgeous coat that he's never seen anything like it. And so he brings that kind of the man closer so he can look at it. And when they get finished with this meeting, Jefferson turns around and says, give him your coat. Well, the one thing in history, and Jefferson even writes about it, is the fact that Osage men were 6 feet tall and taller and were very strapping. And they were going to be unable to wear European style or European size clothing. So what they end up doing is bringing them home and they give them to their daughters. The one thing I think that is most interesting, and Jacqueline West, the head costume designer on this that I worked with, she says it the best, which is, there was this piece of military might, and this was encroaching on who we were as a people. And I mean all nations, as a people, Native nations. And we took this item that was supposed to show its power to us, and we turned it rebelliously into this gorgeous item. We added our own ribbon. We put our own pins on it. We put buttons. We found different items that we would put and include, and each one is different. And that is how it came down through history to this day. We don't have arranged marriages any longer, but what we do have are these beautiful wedding coats that still tell the history of our story and show who we are.
Sure enough, Marty, you said in that early draft that was one of maybe 3 scenes that Molly was in that one. Yeah. And it was funny when I was reading that, I kept picturing Jesse Plemons as Ernest. I don't know what you were thinking at the time, but that was what I was imagining. And then Leo pulled a fast one on all of us. But then I was reading these new sides and I wept because I can play this. I can access this. I can do this. So then I read those sides with Marty in a Zoom. And then a week after that, he sets up a meeting for me to meet Leo over Zoom. So I was able to do this life-changing audition from the comfort of my old bedroom in my parents' house. With them waiting in the living room to hear how it went. Our first meeting was on my dad's birthday. Yeah. Man, I'm surrounded by Scorpio men. It was my dad's birthday, and then it was your birthday, and then it was, Leo's birthday was in between the two. But anyways, yeah, after this, and this is the coolest part, I know it's a long story, but it's a good story. After we have this meeting and we're talking about these changes in the script and my thoughts about it and how I felt like I was just relieved to see that the relationship between these two, which isn't drawn out in great detail in the book, but I agreed when I read it, that's the heart of the story. And it's also where this great analogy for this greater betrayal can play out. And I brought up Graham Greene's The Quiet American as what it reminded me of, and the analysis of our involvement in Vietnam and the imperialism of the British and Americans falling in love with this Vietnamese woman, that's the colonization of Vietnam, and a love story. So I saw that as an opportunity here. And I think, I remember that was a Marty, the first time I was like, saw him do that. You guys know when you're getting it right, you see that, you get excited. So then Leo was shooting another film and was like, let's do a chem read. So I'm at home after this meeting, mid-November, and it rolls around to December 1st. And I'm kind of thinking that all right, waiting for this chem read to get scheduled. So then both of my reps call me at the same time, which means it's big news. And it was the offer with no read. I'd never auditioned with Leo, we just had that one meeting. So I was like, what? No, what? Say that again. Screamed, threw my phone across the room. And the second that I kind of sobered up and calmed down, sobered up from excitement. Oh, when are they gonna call? As soon as I kind of settled down and let it sit for a second, it occurred to me, it's December 1st. It's Molly Burkhart's birthday. Wow. Yeah, and nobody, like I said that later, nobody designed it that way. It wasn't timed out to be surprise, it's Molly's birthday, here's the role. But it felt like it was an immediate, because I'd said, I'd had the whole time, why me? And that felt like a sign that there was some kind of approval coming from something greater than, I could even say. And it also put my feet back on the ground really quick because it reminded me this is a real woman. And being at home, I have my picture of my great-grandma Lily on the mantelpiece above my dad's Sparkle Lounger because she had a heavy hand in raising him. And Lily and Molly were both real, traditional women, spoke their language, matriarchs in the family, very Catholic, very devoutly Catholic. So there was a lot of commonality there, and I just thought, okay, Molly was a real woman, today's her birthday. Approach her the way you would expect another actress to approach Grandma Lily. So yeah, that was kind of the long 1.5-year story to the
Great
first
story.
meeting.
We'll say this, but it's a big risk. And you gave her this huge role. She knocked it out of the park, obviously.
I didn't feel, I felt, maybe it's kind of naivete or something. I just felt she was totally right. I felt totally comfortable. And even if there were to be disagreements, we could discuss them. That's the other thing I felt. We could discuss it and find ways around. Too much there, a little less here. I agree with that. I don't agree with this. I'd rather go this way. In fact, you never read with Leo, did you? You see, there was no audition. I'm telling you. Because I saw, speaking to her is one thing, and then I saw certain women, and I felt it. I knew it. I just felt it. Kelly Reichardt's film. I like her films, and you're also in First Cow, which I like. It's and so I just didn't feel the risk there. In fact, I thought I don't be presumptuous about it, but I felt that we had in a way, safety net is the wrong word, I think, or wrong phrase, but I felt that. I felt if I ever felt anything, I had a question I could ask her. You see, there's something about her that I had total confidence in, and Leo too. And it doesn't mean we didn't disagree from time to time, but even in the disagreement, it was work. It was not anything personal or whatever. In other words, the disagreements would become, whether it was with Leo, with Bob, or Lily, they always became part of the film. In a sense, we worked it out. That's the way each day was done. There was even one day we wrote the scene in the morning. Yeah, and
We got to set and Thelma needs more of the love story, so we have to do a scene where we show that more.
What was the scene?
Yeah, where
And the
Black
music is robbing
is
the black
robbing the
car.
car, where he set it up that, and looking out the window, and then it's the scene where Molly is like, I'm not even sure if you love me anymore. She can't sleep anymore. So that scene.
and it ends with him convincing her again. He means it. He said, I'm there, I'm for you. And then they start to kiss, and then they start to giggle, and he
Wake the
improvised,
kids.
now you're gonna wake up the kids. But we had wanted to do an extra 2 more scenes, and I asked Thelma, because Thelma, the Schoonmaker, my editor, was in New York, and she would see the footage. The good thing about Thelma, she doesn't usually come on set. She just sees the footage coming in. So there was a terrible day on set where everybody hated each other, and nobody ever wanted to see each other again. She doesn't know that. She goes, hey, it was a great scene. She said, don't remind me. So she saw this stuff. She goes, hey, Marty, I think you need 1 more scene between the 2 of them. I said, I knew it. I knew it, and we made it up that day.
On the front of my script, I had a picture of her, the one that most famously, it's the first image you see of her in Grant's book. It's page 9. It's always the one I sign. But it's a picture of her as a young woman before all of this, before Ernest. And she still had all of her sisters, still had her mother, still had her child. No, she didn't have a child yet. But anyways, it's this, it's a young Molly, and there's really nobody living now who knew her. So it was building a real person, not having any videos of her, not knowing what her voice sounded like. I had pictures. And her granddaughter, Margie, who I suspected when I met her that Gran drew Molly from as well. But Margie's just such a composed, beautiful, patient, funny, smart woman that wears it all very, kind of. I mean, the first date scene between the 2 of them, a lot of the pacing and the kind of like head tilts and, you know, the side eyes and stuff came from the way that Margie was interacting in our first meetings with Leo next to me. So we kind of borrowed from her. But also these photos that I had of Molly, you really can, when you're looking at a face like hers, and I hear this all the time about myself, I've heard it since I was 8, the Mona Lisa. But that's what it felt like looking at Molly. But then, so this photo where she's, you know, holding very still for a tintype, was where she started, and then I had this photo on the end that was colorized, and it's her as an older woman before she passed away. You know, I say older, she passed away at 50, which is young. But she's sitting there just really self-possessed. She looks victorious, she looks strong, she looks like she won. And she's looking slightly off camera with this little smile on her face, the same one that Margie wears, and she just looks at peace. If you look at this photo, I drew so much strength from that because it's like that's where I'm getting to. And then something that Marianne Bauer, Marty's archivist and producer on the film, something that she had dug up in her research and, you know, gifted me with this knowledge. It's not in the narrative of the film, but after the trial, after the convictions, after Ernest is in prison, Molly, she went back in. I mean, there's no way to reclaim everything that was taken from her, but you think about everything she went through to have the tenacity and fortitude to sue Ernest for his mismanagement of her money while he was her guardian. And she got back like 14 grand in those dollars from those days back from him. And then she also went after Pitts Beattie, her own guardian, like when Ernest was not her guardian, who she ended up going back to, and got about half that amount. And before she passed away, she was the incompetence status, you know, she was declared competent. She didn't pass away in incompetent Osage. She had full charge of her own finances. She remarried, became a stepmom to her new husband's kids. You know, and kind of like the eulogy of the film is very, very much like when you visit her. You know, I've gone to pay my respects to her several times in Grey Horse. But yeah, what's on her headstone is she's remembered for being loving and being a great mother, being a great wife, and yeah. So there was these two images, just Molly before all of this, and then Molly at the end, close to the end of her life, after winning, you know, in that last decade that she was on Earth after the trial, everything that she accomplished.
Chief, what do you want audiences to take away from this film? Because obviously the injustice is not just back then, it's up to today.
I think David Grand said it. He said to us what he learned is the question is not who was complicit, it's who wasn't. And that stuck with me. And also, when Marty, one of our meetings, I saw all these stories and how was he going to make sense of it? And I asked him, and he said, I'm going to tell this story on 2 levels, but both of them are about trust and betrayal. I'm going to tell the story about the trust the Osage had with everyone, and the betrayal of that trust, and the trust that Molly had in Ernest, and the betrayal of that trust. And that's when I realized I was sitting next to a genius.
But you put yourself in this film, and I could feel how mad you were about what happened to these people. If you could talk about that and also talk about the fact that I think you've said this is the most important film you're ever going to make. Did you say that?
Yes, I did, yes. Because I think I've been, for me, exploring, you know, who we are as human beings, what we're all capable of. Under certain circumstances, what I have been complicit to, being a European American, you know. What would we have done if we were in Germany between 1920 and 1932. All of this, if we were in occupied France, you know, during the Second World War. So all these things come to mind, or during the Blacklist. All these things come to mind, and this really put me right on the edge of that. Particularly the characters of Molly and Ernest, with her trust. She trusted Ernest till the end, until she finally asks him directly, and he lies again. So she gets up and leaves finally, you know. Ernest, maybe not the brightest, and certainly a weak man, but Ernest, he never believed that his uncle would take it that far to kill Molly. He doesn't understand that his uncle would have taken it that far and to kill him too. So he was deluding himself out of his weakness. And so for me, all of that has been kind of stirring up in me for the past 50 years, telling stories like this of stronger, weaker people. The case of Silence, Kichijiro, who keeps stepping on Jesus' face, giving in, and yet he has to be forgiven again. The wretched of the earth being forgiven. And all these things kept going on in my head this way. And so by the time I came up with the idea of the radio show early on, but by the time we had to shoot it, I felt that the obituary had to be acted a certain way, and I didn't know how to direct another actor. I just didn't know what to tell that person and who that person could be. And so I shot it about a month after the filming was done. There's a theater in my old high school, Cardinal Hayes High School in the Bronx. And so they gave us that theater, my wife was there, one of my daughters, my granddaughter, a couple of other friends, and I figured if I couldn't do it, I would then at least have gone through the process and I could tell another actor how to do it and reshoot it. But as I was doing it, the language of it, particularly the lining up of her mother, her father, her sisters, her daughter, and the repetition of that, even now I feel the emotion of it, and I think it happened on screen. And then I said, yeah, and these things are never mentioned again. And I realized it just, no mention of the murders at all. But I saw the kids, and I thought of my own family, I thought of all our families, and what it would be like, because I was at those graves. I saw the tombstones lined up, and it hit me. And the people there told me it was good. Some of the actors and his friends said, hey, that was good. I said, okay, maybe I don't have to reshoot it then. But I did feel that, that and the weight of my own complicity in how maybe growing up I think of other cultures and other people differently, and I have maybe, made films which are, I try to be as truthful as possible in the films. That also means it could offend people. Sorry, but it does. But I was trying to be artistically truthful, whether the film was artistically successful or not. And so I felt that complicity and being part of the problem, really, myself.
It is, well, the artistic success speaks for itself, I think it's fair to say. It is an absolutely beautiful and very important film. It has been a real thrill and honor to be here with Chief Standing Bear and Lily Gladstone and Martin Scorsese. Please give them all a
To be conquered. If our stories were told, someone else was writing them. And when it came time to cast these films and shows, there was always a chance a non-native actor would get the part. Happily, all that is changing. Films like Killers of the Flower Moon and shows like Reservation Dogs demonstrate the power of representation, both on the screen and behind the scenes. When Indigenous people are present and given opportunities, it creates a more equitable entertainment industry and makes room for more people to tell their stories.